Okay, airheads. Thanks for showing up to watch this video. And before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like and subscribe. So I'm gonna get into it here. The story behind me buying this airbrush is that I had got an air hose wound around what I normally like to wear in the shop, which is my flip-flops. And upon walking away, yanked one of my airbrushes, a Peak C5, which they do not sell anymore, onto the floor. Now, the thing I like about these is that at the time, they were very inexpensive, very effective, and I didn't mind it if something happened to one of them. They were, generally easy to replace or at least fix. And they are a clone of an Iwata HPC, so you can see, even if you couldn't get parts from one place, you could get parts from another place and fix them up pretty good. But those are not around anymore. So I went looking for another compatible or comparable, at least, airbrush, and I came across spraygunner.com, and they're offering this Sparmax. This is a $69.99 airbrush. And, it's basically a simple box, nothing fancy. We got some instructions, parts you can order, and the build of this airbrush is generally the same. They give you some information here, and then they tell you who packed up your order and sent it on its way. They give you some cleaning brushes, which I've got a set of these. I don't really use them that much, the way that I flush my brushes out. And this is going to be for the color cup. Also, not going to use that. The wrench, this little tiny wrench, is for taking the tip off, which is actually the thing that busted on the other airbrush. I've had airbrushes fall off the easel before. I've had them fall on the ground on hard surfaces, but this one hit right on the nose. I mean, it like a dart, tink, and that ruined everything. Threads were all messed up, and there was no getting around it. So this airbrush comes with a thing that I don't know. I've never used anything like this. I've never seen anything like this, and I don't know if anybody would ever use anything like this. It's just, my opinion. It's a single action valve, which is actually nothing but a funnel for air to go through. So you unscrew this, and then it has your valve. Your trigger presses this down, and then you've got air, and replaces it with this so that it's nothing but constant airflow, which means your compressor is going to be kicking on even when you're not painting. I don't understand the concept of that. Now, if I was going to offer Spray Gunner or Sparmax, whoever is responsible for all of this, if I was going to offer any advice, it would be, instead of wasting the money and material on machining this and putting this in here, put in one of these and one of these, because everybody uses these. They all use quick disconnects, and that way, you're actually giving your customer something that they can use. That goes on the end there, hand tight, and it's all good. But yeah, they give you some instructions. Now this is a DH103, and the only difference between the DH and the DH3 and the 103 is the preset handle. This basically governs how far back the trigger is going to go. You can unscrew it all the way and get a nice big spray pattern, or limit your trigger pull. There's some advice, some troubleshooting, other information about the Armadillo Art and Crafts, who is basically distributing this airbrush. I do not know, and I did have the question when I was looking at this before and I couldn't answer it. Made in Taiwan, okay, so not China, but an actual little republic outside of China, and I would much rather be getting my material from them for obvious political reasons. Cap is curved, On your other airbrushes, like your Iwatas and so forth, you're going to have it's going to be flat with carved out rings in the top. The only other real big difference I see between this and the Iwata HPC or the Peak, the chucking nut is the same, and a lot of the measurements on these parts are standard thread pitches, standard fittings, but the only real big difference is that the needle chuck guide and the well, they call it the needle chuck guide, but in a lot of airbrushes, this rocker and the needle chuck guide, is very often in two different parts. I don't really know if that's supposed to add to the smoothness of the action. First airbrushes I ever used that I knew what I was doing with was a Pache VL, and those were set up the same way. Those two parts connected with a little pin. It's got a nice, feel to it. I did use it yesterday. Yeah, something I noticed when I was pulling this apart before, that between here and here, there's two chambers where the fluid goes and where the mechanics of the rest of the airbrush are. It's called a needle packing ring, which is going to be parts 8 and 9, okay? And what that basically does is keeps any fluid from here from backing up into the rest of the brush here and gumming up your works. This is set really well. It's stiff enough that it's going to keep the fluid out, but it's set so that there's a nice ease of movement. It's very easy to set the needle packing ring too tight, and which gives you a stiffness, and if it's really wrong, will inhibit your ability to actually move the trigger back and forth. I take everything apart, and it's kind of hard to get at because it's way down in there, so you got to have a really small flathead screwdriver. Anyways, it's something that 20 plus years of experience with these things will teach you. Actually, I think we're coming up onto 30 here. No, we'll say 31. So we get it all back together. We got the quick disconnect on here. I'll take the cap off because I never paint with the cap. But all in all, so far, for the price, this feels exactly like the kind of airbrush that I lost to gravity and impact. These are not airbrushes that I'm expecting to get a lot of detail out of. I've got a couple of Krios PS770s, which I think they make a PS771 now. So they discontinued one and made something almost exactly like it. I have 2 of those, a Rich Pen, and 4 airbrushes like this. A lot of times, when you want to lay down a lot of color and you want to get moderate detail, you grab one of these things, and then if you're going to get into even more detailed work, you'll bring your other brushes out so that you can, really dial in on some stuff, especially if you got a really small area. The last project that I was working on, I'll be putting a video together about that. That was the process. I lost the other airbrush while I was painting that, so that's how we got here. And I don't do a lot of review videos, but I've never seen one of these before. It's been a while since I bought an airbrush because I try to take such good care of them that I'm only ever sharpening a needle, or I've got extra parts laying out around already that I can use. So it's literally been years since I picked up a new airbrush, and then gone through the adventures of, oh, they don't make that anymore, now what do I do, type stuff. So anyways, I'm going to plug this in, and I'm going to show you guys how it does with some color. I've got some white loaded up, and I'm just going to do a white smoke on here. It's a white urethane. I work almost exclusively with urethane. And we're at about, 40, we're at a little bit over 35 PSI. Most of the time when I'm getting my my pressure set, I do it by feel. So this feels nice and light. I don't think I'm going to be blowing a whole lot of paint all over the place. This looks a little grainy. I might thin it out some more, but so let's see how she does. I bumped it up a little bit. So it might be at like 40 or something. Now, this trigger feels a little tall to me. And it's really nothing. It's a lot like, you know, driving a car that you're not used to. Eventually, you know, you'll warm up to it. It's not like going from an automatic to a stick. It's smooth enough for the price point. It's not going to be a super smooth, super overtuned, polished insides. You know, that's one of the things that makes a custom micron and brushes of that level expensive, is because you have to take the time to get your tolerances way tighter and to get the stuff on the inside more polished and stuff. So it's a much more smooth ride. Now, it is by no means clunky. It doesn't feel like something that comes with, if you ever go through eBay or Amazon and you see an airbrush setup that comes with the battery operated compressor, which I might even grab one of those one day so I can do a review on it. They'll usually come with an airbrush that is just an absolute piece of crap. The person who's using it doesn't really know better, and they might be using it for something other than custom paint. When you start getting into custom paint or you're doing fine art, you know, you need some airbrushes that are, you know, much more responsive, that don't feel like you're grinding two pieces of sandpaper together when you're pulling the trigger back. So this is, I would say, especially, you know, keeping in mind how much it costs, a way more than a serviceable airbrush for the cost. The only thing that I would probably, if I don't know that they offered it, and I might not have looked deep enough on the site, but I probably would have grabbed the DH3 because I really don't use the preset handle. I see a lot of times people just take the handle off, but when you do that, your finger sometimes will rub up against the needle chuck, and that can cause some errors. So we've got some big spraying on here. Let's see what it looks like in detail. Let's get in some, what am I over the A? Let's get in some hairlines. Okay, now that's my compressor kicking on. My homemade silent compressor. Put some more thinner in here, thin it out a little bit. So, and basically, and I'm trying to remember if I covered this in a video. I'll put a little bit of thinner in there, and then I'll blow back through the cup and let the bubbles stir it up, mix it up a little bit. But in general, when you're airbrushing, if you want to use a lower pressure, a lower PSI, you need to have a thinner paint. You know, the thicker your paint is, the more pressure you need to drive it through the brush. The trade-off is, you know, when you thin out your paint, you're also thinning out the pigment, so your color doesn't happen immediately. The action of the airbrush might. And this is a very responsive, again, for the price point. Yeah, my needle might be set back just a little bit too much, so I'm gonna, you know, make sure I've got it seated in there the right way. Now, you don't want to take the needle and shove it into the tip and end up splitting it, but you do want to make sure that it's seated the right way, so that when you push forward on the trigger and it's all the way down, that you don't get little trails, okay? And we're not getting that here, so. But I'm just barely pulling back on the trigger, and I'm getting some good reaction out of it. Now, I might even go further with this if I felt like it. Get some polishing compound. Where is it? There. Get some polishing compound on a paper towel. Stick this needle into a drill and polish the hell out of it. And I might even be able to get some more detail out of it. But for right now, and again, I can't express it enough, $70. This is a very good airbrush for the price. I don't know if I want to do a 10 or stars, but I would say it's a 2 enthusiastic thumbs up for sure. Now, this company is going to be around for a while, and they're not going to crash out so that I miss out on parts. You know, something happens to this and I want to get parts for it. I need to know that the company's going to be there to get it to me. And it would be nice if the parts are compatible. You know, are you using the same kind of tip that this other place is using, so I can like get 4 or 5 of them, you know. I don't like to have to wait to fix an airbrush. I want to get the tip, I want to get it fixed, and then order that later. You know, I don't order tape when I need it. I don't order paint right when I need it. I order it before I need it. Sparmax DH103. Clearly the best bang for the buck. Would recommend. Now I'm going to clean this out, and I'm going to go cut this video together. I hope you guys have learned something. I enjoyed teaching you about it, and I will be talking to the people at Spray Gunner in the future. Talk to you later.